Hello, this is episode 3 and this is about Storygraph. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the other 2 episodes. So the Storygraph is basically an Excel spreadsheet like Goodreads, but it differs from Goodreads in that, first of all, it's not owned by Jeff Bezos, and also because it has all of the graphs and stats and stuff displayed. Initially, all of the Storygraph recommendations that you would get would be based on a survey that you took, similar to the one like in the book note, but like not as intense, not as specific. But they've since revamped, and now you can get recommendations based on the survey plus some data that they have on you, based on genre, based on recent reads. There's a readers also like section. There's books out of your comfort zone. So this one is going to be split up into 2 parts. Part 1 is going to be based on the survey that I took pre-revamp, and then part 2 is going to be based on the survey post-revamp and based on the other recommendations that they give. So far in our quest, it has been a race for last place. We'll see if the Storygraph will change that this week. Anyway, part 1. Pollen from a Future Harvest. This is a novella. I think it's a bit of a long novella from like a series of other novellas. This one was alright, but it had many things going against it. The first thing being that this is about time travel. The second thing being that this is military science fiction, very military sci-fi. There like ranks and the general brigadier and the whatever. Oh my God. The third thing being that this has Africans written by a non-African, but I still managed to find some enjoyment out of this. This book is a hard science fiction about time travel and biology, but Trojan horsed, masquerading as a murder mystery set in space, set on a colony in the far future. My enjoyment came mostly from the ideas. This is a big ideas book. The murder mystery itself, I didn't care. Like when the reveals were happening, I found that I didn't care, but that was mostly because I didn't care about the characters. These people are like in a very weird, military type society on this alien planet in the future. So it was hard to care about them. You are your role, basically. So it's very hard to like really form any sort of emotional attachment to anybody, even though the person we were following was like, upset by the death of the person. They have like interesting social structures as well, I guess, but this is an ideas book. The military sci-fi aspect I was not enjoying it, but like the social structure of this military was interesting enough that I didn't find it as boring as I usually would. And the time travel aspect I actually enjoyed, surprisingly. But the Africans written by non-Africans, that was, oh my God, I found myself rolling my eyes multiple times because you can see the Europeanness of this author shining through. Our main character was a Zimbabwean lady, and this was very much, autofellatio through this lady, through this puppet that this author has created. That's how it felt for most of the time. I don't mind, don't get me wrong, I don't mind when worlds are populated by Africans, depending on who's writing it. But generally speaking, when I read a science fiction, I do not want us mentioned at all. If you've read a lot of sci-fi throughout the years, there's a reason why Afrofuturism is its own separate thing. The way that we're written in books, my God, anyway. But I don't mind that. I usually don't mind if your world is populated by all sorts of different types of people. What I do mind is when you think that you have some sort of insight into Africanness when you just clearly don't. Unless you're Kim Stanley Robinson. This author like just clearly wants to have sex with the French language sexual. Anyway, the thing that I did enjoy, the time travel aspect, I enjoyed it because of the metaphor. The metaphor is clearly about creating your own destiny, even in the face of like the most stifling of conditions, even in circumstances as stifling as time itself, and I think this was buttressed by having the African cast. Despite my feelings on the author thinking that he has some insight into anything about being African, past, future, present. But that was really good. There's some other stuff in this that I like. I don't want to spoil it. Like you would not have a bad time reading this book, and I didn't have a bad time reading this. I had a decent time. Decent book. 3 stars. These are some of the Storygraph book recommendations that I did not finish. This was like pre-revamp, of course. First of all, Primordia. This one is a very silly, goofy, broy, corny, cheesy science fiction set on planet Earth. This is about a US American military vet whose father dies. And afterwards, he's like going through his dad's stuff and he finds out that his dad had a secret, was hiding a secret or something. And that secret might be, I don't know, a hidden world or something like that. Very cheesy. Would make like a decent, fun, goofy B-movie though. Speaking of making a good movie, there was the Oracle year. This one was too slow. And we had way too many points of view. Way too many characters who I didn't care about. I just did not care. This could make a good movie, provided it is put into the hands of a screenwriter who's not afraid to do a lot of chopping. Cut out a lot of some of these superfluous characters and their arcs and stuff. The Oracle year, set on Earth, there's a theme here with these books. This is about a guy who one day magically gets like a bunch of random prophecies magically injected into his brain, and I think he writes them all down in a book. And then this is about the fallout of him sharing these prophecies with the world, some of them anyway. He also does some other shady things as well. Interesting premise for a film, I think. Just didn't work for me in book form. Then we have In Beta, and this one was about a bunch of people, I don't know, digging out a collapsed city. Another one set on Earth. Then there was Saturn Run, and this one had promise, right? Because at least there's some space in this. This one was about an alien ship is detected visiting Saturn, but like this detection happens by accident. But then this book is about the fallout of that, like how China and the USA reacts to that. There was like some space race type drama between China and the US, yawn. And this also took too long to get going. Plus, I think we were bogged down by too many technical details, a la The Martian. Like, I like that stuff, I like reading hard science fiction, and I like, reading about tech and stuff. If it's done well, if it's done in an engaging way. Again, the authors who are good at it, KSR, Stephen Baxter, Greg Egan, they're very good at making science and technobabble fun to read about. It wasn't fun in this. Those were just like the notable ones. There were other ones, but I think you can see the theme here. So when I changed around some of the parameters of my survey on Storygraph, I did start getting different types of recommendations, thankfully. The first one I'm going to talk about is one that I did not finish, and this is Aurora. And Kim Stanley Robinson is one of my favorite authors of all time. Some of his books are my favorite books ever, and some of them are not. This is one of the nots. I did not finish this one. I should have given up on it when I wanted to, like right at the beginning. It was just a long sailing scene at the beginning, just like lovingly described by KSR. That I saw that, I was like, oh, I want to leave. This one, Aurora, is a generationship story, and oh my god. Oh my god. Once you've read one generationship story, you've read them all, and this was no different. I don't like them. I don't like them. I thought I would like this one. Why did I think I would like this one? Because it's KSR. But that's it. The second book from the new permutations is The Secret City. This one I did finish it, but I gave this 2 stars. This book, oh my god. So this is about aliens who look like Neanderthals. I don't think that they are Neanderthals. I think they're just like aliens who look like Neanderthals. This is about them, and they have a secret city here on Earth for reasons. So we follow 2 characters, one who was born and lived in the secret city, and another one who lived amongst human beings, and they go on like their own little adventures. It was like watching a movie from the 70s, and I mean that negatively, like just extremely negatively. I don't know how to explain that, except for like, what's like a good movie? Stepford Wives. It's from the 70s. It's pretty good, right? What else? That's all I can think of at this point. But like, oh god, it was so bad. I didn't like it. There's like a very insta love romance in this as well. There's some weird things going on in one of our characters' storyline with like the farmer's daughter also. Oh god. It made me feel gross. I needed to take a shower after this. The vibes were off. It made me feel gross, and it was not fun. And I usually really, really, really like a fish out of water type of story, which this kind of was. But like, the 70s were a horrible decade. Tangled Wires is a recommendation that Storygraph gave me based on recent reads. I don't remember what book I read before this that made it recommend this. What was it? Maybe some sort of sci-fi Some sort of sci-fi romance, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember. But this was weird. This was so weird. Weird and bad. Like, just don't read this. I'm gonna spoil this book for you. This is a science fiction romance about a human woman and like a robot, a secret robot. Nobody knows that this person is a robot except for this lady, because this robot was made by this lady's dad, and the dad was like a, you know, a psychopath. The tone of this is like very grim and weird. Our heroine keeps like having blackouts and stuff. There are like references to mental illness that requires hospitalization. Also the characters are also like very antagonistic towards each other. I don't know, this reading this book made me feel like I'm walking down like a hospital, like the hallway of a hospital, but it's like a hospital in a video game. In a horror video game. Like, you know, when you start a horror movie and a character wakes up in a hospital, you know, it's bad news. This is what this felt like I was reading, and I'm like, this is a romance. This is bad. Also, spoilers. I'm gonna spoil this book for you. Do not read this. Something weird and gross and unnecessary. Turns out that this robot, the guy robot, who was made by her father, the father kind of like uploaded some of his personality, downloaded some of his personality into the robot or something. I don't understand authors sometimes. Like, how do you write that and not be grossed out? I don't get it, especially in a romance. Like, it's not like this is a horror movie. If this was a horror, I'd be like, oh my god, that's great, that's horrific, that's great, that's so good. What a twist! It's a romance. We're supposed to be rooting for these characters, and like, ugh. I don't get it. Like, I just don't understand. My god. Storygraph says similar users also like Bobbyverse. No, that's not what it's called. It's called Weird Legion, but it's in the Bobbyverse series, I suppose. I didn't finish this one. This is about Bob, who at the beginning decides to pay for one of those like cryogenic freezing things. I don't know if it's like a real thing where like they freeze you cryogenically, and then in the future when the technology has been developed, they'll unfreeze you. Oh my god, there was a telenovela about this. Wait. It wasn't My Heartbeats for Lola. Oh my god. Something Ponce de Leon. Anyway, Bob does that, and then he like dies immediately, and then we wake up, I don't know, many years in the future, and he gets his consciousness downloaded, I don't know, into like a robot or something, and hijinks ensue. Bob, our main character, I just did not connect with him at all. In fact, I found him a little bit annoying, a little bit insufferable, like just kind of high-key insufferable, you know? Like I kind of hated him, you know what I mean? And unfortunately, he was inescapable. This is about Bob. There are many Bobs. Like the geopolitics of the future Earth in this book were kind of silly. I think this is like trying to be like Hitchhikers or whatever, but like written by, no offense, an American. I don't even know if he's from the US. And also the critique of like theocratic states, which I think this was doing at the beginning, but like satire, like heightened, you know what I mean? It lacked finesse for me. It's hard to do good satire, and this just missed the mark for me. But I understand this recommendation. I can understand how other people who like science fiction and have read the same books and read and liked the same books I liked could like this book. Just didn't land for me. I think this is a novelization of a movie, or the movie that's out on Netflix, which I have not watched. It looks terrible, is based on this book. There's basically a fantasy story that subverts the damsel in distress trope. There's a damsel who's going to be in distress, obviously. There's a prince, there's a handsome hot prince, there's a dragon. The writing is patronizingly simple. I was like, is this for kids? Is this YA? It read like young YA, but it had some like older YA themes in it. I had fun with this. I gave this 2 stars because it's not a good, like it's a terrible book, but I had a lot of fun. This is one of those it's so good it's bad type of books. Like it is, oh my god, I was having a great time. I've said this before, but I like a very particular, specific type of suffering, and this book provided that for me. I was enjoying turning the page and thinking to myself, this is so fucking bad, but the story is interesting. I don't know if the film is as bad as this book, but you know, Could be fun. Could be fun to watch with a group of friends. Then another book out of my comfort zone that was recommended to me by Storygraph that I tried to read was The Breakup Club. I think this is like general fiction or whatever, or women's fiction or contemporary novel. I don't know. Whatever. One of those like mundane pedestrian genres. This one is about a lot of sad women who are in a book club who like learn that divorce is an option. They're learning for the first time that divorce is an option. I didn't finish this. It's like Intro to Women's Liberation 101 for like the aunties, like the older aunties, you know, maybe. Another book out of my comfort zone that Storygraph wanted to recommend to me was a fantasy book called The Sacrifice, and it is a part of a series called The Fae, I think. This is the type of fantasy that I don't like. Kingdoms and empires and war, and we're colonizing this area, and we're, you know, taking this or whatever. I don't, not for me. I think this is the most amount of books I try to read from any like recommendation site, and like still like you can see for yourself. 1.5 stars. The race for last place continues. I think in comparison to the book note was better because the one book that I did finish from the book note, I actually genuinely enjoyed, and it was what I was looking for at the time. I got what I wanted. With Storygraph, the books that I did finish, I didn't really like that much, you know? So yeah, I think the book note is better if you want like really specific tailor-made recommendations. For now, we'll see, maybe things will change in the future. Speaking of the future, I think it'll be useful for the next one to be about Goodreads, so we can compare these two.